The simp economy has collapsed, and millions of women around the world now face the raw consequences of decades of choices that pushed men completely out of the picture. Listen carefully, because this is not some temporary dip or a phase that will bounce back next year. Men have walked away in numbers so large that entire industries built on male spending to impress women are crumbling, and the chain reaction is only getting started. What you're about to hear is the straight truth about how we reached this point, what it really means for everyday life, and why the men who chose solitude are not coming back, no matter how loud the pleas get on social media. Here is the hard truth staring everyone in the face right now. In places like China alone, marriage registrations dropped to the lowest levels seen since the late 1970s, with just over 6 million couples tying the knot in recent years, representing a massive 20% decline in a single year. And that pattern is echoing across many societies where men have simply decided the costs outweigh any possible reward. Women who spent years demanding independence while expecting men to subsidize their lifestyles through dates, rent help, gifts, and endless attention are discovering that when men listen and step back, the safety net disappears entirely. The state budgets are stretched thin everywhere, with governments unable to fill the gap left by absent male providers. And suddenly, those same women who celebrated pushing men away find themselves confronting a cost of living crisis that hits single women especially hard, with higher poverty risks, thinner emergency savings, and no one left to pick up the tab for the lifestyle they grew accustomed to. Think about it like this. For decades, women were told they could have it all without compromise, and men were painted as the problem standing in the way of progress. Terms like toxic masculinity got thrown around constantly, while everyday behaviors got turned into public shaming campaigns that made normal men feel like criminals just for existing in public spaces. Courts became weapons in family disputes where outcomes often left men drained financially and emotionally, even when they did everything right. Public interactions turned into minefields, with recordings going viral over minor things, and groups formed online to share negative information about men in ways that destroyed reputations before any real relationship could even begin. Men absorbed all of that year after year until the message sank in completely. They were not needed. They were not wanted on equal terms. Their efforts were taken for granted or weaponized against them. So they listened. They walked away. They found peace in focusing on their own lives, and they are not looking back. Now, picture the average guy who used to grind through long work weeks only to spend his free time and money chasing approval in the dating scene. He would plan expensive outings, cover costs without question, and still face constant tests or demands that never seemed to end. Over time, he started noticing the pattern. Relationships often felt one sided, with chaos introduced for attention and validation, while his own needs for respect and reciprocity went unmet. He saw how paternity issues could be gamed, and how social narratives always positioned men as the villains, no matter the facts. He watched industries thrive on the idea that men should prove their worth through spending, while women position themselves as the prize simply by showing up. Eventually, the calculation became clear. Staying single and directing that energy and money toward personal stability brought more satisfaction than the endless cycle of pursuit and disappointment. Men started choosing minimalist routines that cut out unnecessary stress. They invested in hobbies that delivered real enjoyment, like gaming setups, outdoor equipment, or simple home comforts, instead of funding someone else's lifestyle. They rediscovered the freedom that comes from not constantly performing for validation, and they realized solitude does not equal loneliness when you build a life that actually fits who you are. This shift did not happen overnight. It built up through years of cultural messages that told men their natural traits were problematic. Schools emphasized different approaches for boys and girls, often leaving young men feeling like they had to suppress their instincts to fit in. Workplaces introduced policies that sometimes treated men with suspicion rather than fairness. Media stories highlighted negative examples while downplaying positive contributions from ordinary men who showed up every day as providers and protectors. Women, in many cases, embraced narratives that framed traditional roles as oppression while still expecting the benefits of those roles when convenient. The result was a generation of men who grew wary of commitment because the risks looked too high and the rewards too uncertain. They saw friends go through divorces that wiped out savings and limited access to children. They heard stories of false accusations that ruined careers even when proven wrong later. They experienced dating scenes where effort went unreciprocated and where apps turned interactions into shallow transactions rather than genuine connections. So they opted out not out of hatred, but out of self preservation and a clear eyed assessment of reality. Look at the economic side of this because numbers do not lie, even when feelings try to argue otherwise. In high pressure economies, marriage and family formation carry huge upfront costs that fall disproportionately on men, including housing expectations, vehicles, ceremony expenses, and ongoing support. When those costs climb into the hundreds of thousands while incomes stagnate for average workers, the math stops making sense. Men calculate lifetime expenses and realize that staying single frees up substantial resources for their own security and enjoyment. Industries that relied on couples spending or on men treating women to experiences start to feel the pinch. Beverage chains that thrived on group outings see sales drop when men stop buying rounds for dates. Entertainment sectors notice quieter crowds during traditional couple heavy holidays because fewer men are motivated to plan those experiences. Tourism tied to romantic getaways or family trips slows as single men choose cheaper solo adventures or simply stay home with their chosen comforts. Meanwhile, sectors aimed at male hobbies see growth with equipment for fishing, sports gear, gaming hardware, and personal projects selling steadily because men are redirecting their disposable income inward. Women on the other side are feeling the squeeze in ways that become harder to ignore with each passing year. Single women often report tighter budgets with less room for savings or emergencies compared to those in partnerships. The wage realities mean many earn less on average while facing the full burden of rent, utilities, food, and transportation without a second income to share the load. Dating fatigue sets in for some, but for others, the bigger issue is the shrinking pool of men willing to engage at all. Social media fills with posts where women express frustration over the lack of approaches or the difficulty of finding committed partners. Some shift to direct appeals, asking men to return to traditional roles, while others demand financial help outright through various online channels. The pattern repeats across different countries because the underlying dynamics are similar. When men hear those calls, they remember the years of being told they were disposable or toxic, and they stay focused on their own path. The pleas do not pull them back because trust has eroded too deeply and the peace they found feels too valuable to risk again. Men who walk away describe a kind of clarity that comes after stepping out of the constant negotiation. They no longer worry about reading mixed signals or proving their worth through material displays. Their days involve steady routines that prioritize health, skill building, and simple pleasures that do not require external approval. Some take up physical activities that build strength and discipline. Others dive into learning new trades or deepening existing careers without the distraction of relationship drama. Financial decisions become straightforward with money staying in their own accounts rather than flowing out to cover someone else's expectations. They form friendships based on shared interests rather than forced social obligations tied to dating circles. Sleep improves, stress levels drop. Many report feeling more grounded than they did during years of chasing validation in a system that seemed designed to keep moving the goalposts. This is not about giving up on life, but about refusing to participate in a setup that consistently undervalued their contributions while amplifying risks. Society as a whole starts to reflect these changes in subtle but measurable ways. Birth rates continue trends that worry planners because fewer stable partnerships form and people delay or skip family building altogether. Housing markets adjust as demand for large family homes softens in some areas, while smaller, efficient units or shared living options gain interest among singles. Consumer patterns shift toward products that serve individual needs rather than couple or family oriented ones. Governments notice the implications for future tax bases and social programs when fewer children enter the population pipeline and when single adults rely more heavily on public services without the buffering effect of private family support. Discussions about fairness in family law gain volume as more voices point out imbalances that contributed to male withdrawal. Yet the core issue remains that men who have tasted genuine autonomy are reluctant to trade it for arrangements that historically left them exposed. Consider the daily reality for a man who has made this choice. He wakes up in a space arranged exactly as he likes it without compromise. His schedule belongs to him, allowing time for exercise, meal preparation that fits his preferences, and hobbies that recharge rather than drain him. Work feels more purposeful when the fruits of his labor stay with him instead of funding endless external demands. Evenings involve relaxation on his terms, whether that means reading, gaming, tinkering with projects, or simply resting without the mental load of navigating someone else's emotional landscape. Weekends become opportunities for genuine rest or exploration rather than obligatory outings designed to impress. Over months and years, this lifestyle compounds into greater financial security, better physical health, and mental clarity that many describe as life changing. They look back at previous efforts in dating and see how much energy was wasted on cycles that rarely delivered lasting satisfaction. The realization hits that being alone with purpose beats being together in chaos. Women facing this new landscape often express surprise because the narrative they grew up with suggested men would always pursue regardless of conditions. Social media amplifies voices that frame the situation as a crisis, needing immediate fixes like lower standards or policy changes to encourage male participation. Some women begin reflecting on past choices, realizing that constant emphasis on independence came with hidden costs when support systems failed to materialize. Others double down on existing attitudes, insisting the problem lies with men who refuse to step up. The divide widens as observable reality shows men thriving in their chosen solitude, while many women struggle with the practical burdens of full independence in an economy that has not delivered the promised ease. Stories circulate of women in their 30s and 40s adjusting expectations dramatically after years of holding firm to high lists of requirements that filtered out most potential partners. The market dynamics become brutally honest with age and fertility windows closing, while the number of men actively seeking commitment shrinks. The pattern recognition that men developed over time proved reliable. They observed repeated behaviors where initial interest faded into entitlement or where conflicts arose from mismatched expectations around effort and contribution. They noticed how public discourse often dismissed male concerns while amplifying female ones, creating an environment where honest feedback felt risky. Dating platforms turned interactions into numbers games that favored superficial traits over character and stability. Real world encounters carried the weight of potential misinterpretation or public exposure that could damage livelihoods. When men stepped back and compared the stress of participation against the calm of self directed living, the choice became obvious for millions. They built routines that emphasized self reliance and mutual respect in non romantic relationships. They supported friends without the complications of romantic entanglement. They pursued goals that aligned with their values rather than external pressures. The result is a quiet revolution happening one man at a time, where personal peace replaces societal expectation. This does not mean all men are identical in their approach or that every woman faces the same challenges. Individual circumstances vary widely based on location, career, personal history, and support networks. Yet, the broader trend holds because the incentives shifted dramatically. When the perceived value of traditional partnership drops below the costs involved, rational actors adjust their behavior. Men who once saw relationships as a natural part of adult life now view them as optional and often high risk. They prioritize observable outcomes over promises or social approval. They trust patterns they have witnessed firsthand rather than cultural stories that no longer match reality. Women who adapted by focusing on genuine compatibility and mutual contribution sometimes find partners, but the overall pool has changed with fewer men willing to overlook past cultural messaging. The conversation becomes more honest in private circles where people admit the old models are breaking down and new equilibria are forming slowly. Economic data continues to underscore the shift. Single adults, especially women, report higher financial strain in areas like housing affordability and emergency preparedness. Studies show gaps in wealth accumulation that widen without dual incomes or shared responsibilities. Consumer sectors tied to female driven spending or couple activities experience slowdowns, while those serving individual male interests expand. Governments grapple with demographic implications, including future workforce shortages and increased demand for certain social services. Young people entering adulthood observe these patterns and make their own calculations, often delaying major life steps or choosing paths that minimize entanglement. The result is a society reorienting around more individualized living arrangements with all the opportunities and challenges that brings. Men who embrace this path often describe rediscovering aspects of themselves that got buried under relationship pressures. They experiment with different routines, testing what truly brings satisfaction rather than what society claims should. Some simplify possessions, focusing on quality over quantity. Others expand skills that provide both practical benefits and personal pride. Physical health becomes a priority because energy levels directly impact quality of life when no one else is responsible for motivation. Mental space opens up, allowing deeper reflection and creative pursuits that were previously sidelined. Friendships strengthen when they are based on voluntary shared interests rather than obligatory couple socializing. The overall effect is a life that feels more authentic and sustainable, even if it looks different from traditional expectations. At the same time, the absence of male engagement in certain areas creates ripple effects that touch everyone. Communities notice changes in social events where attendance shifts toward activities that appeal to singles or small groups. Businesses adapt their marketing to target self directed consumers rather than assuming couple or family spending. Educational and career paths evolve as young men and women make choices based on the visible outcomes around them. Discussions about fairness in institutions gain traction as more people recognize how imbalances contributed to widespread disengagement. The truth is that relationships work best When both sides bring value and respect without one feeling constantly exploited or undervalued. When that balance erodes, participants vote with their feet, and that is exactly what millions of men have done. The stories from different parts of the world show striking similarities despite cultural differences. In fast paced economies, men cite high living costs and uncertain returns on investment in family life. In places with strong traditional expectations, the pressure to meet material standards drives many to opt out entirely. Women in their later 20s and 30s increasingly report difficulty finding partners who match their revised expectations after earlier years of selectivity. Social platforms fill with testimonials of regret or frustration, but also with declarations of independence that sometimes mask underlying struggles. Men share experiences of relief after stepping away, describing clearer minds and lighter burdens. The collective data points to a reconfiguration rather than a temporary glitch with long term implications for how societies organize around partnership and provision. Understanding this Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Requires looking beyond surface level complaints to the underlying incentives and repeated behaviors that shaped current realities. Men did not wake up one day and decide to withdraw en masse. They responded to years of consistent signals that their role was optional at best and burdensome at worst. They watched as legal and social frameworks sometimes favored outcomes that left them with less security. They experienced interactions where effort met dismissal or where genuine interest got labeled as problematic. They calculated the time and money spent on pursuits that rarely led to stable mutual satisfaction. Eventually, the rational response was to redirect resources towards self development and personal stability. That choice brought tangible benefits that reinforced the decision for many. Peace became the new priority over performance. Women navigating this environment face practical questions about sustainability. Maintaining independent households requires steady income that covers all expenses without supplemental support. Building savings for future needs becomes more challenging when costs rise faster than earnings for many. Social connections shift as peer groups change, with some choosing similar single paths and others forming families. Health considerations, including fertility timelines, add urgency for those who desire children, but find the partner pool limited. Some respond by broadening their criteria or focusing on self improvement that enhances compatibility. Others maintain firm standards, hoping the market will adjust in their favor. The outcomes vary, but the underlying economic and social pressures remain consistent across many regions. The men who stay committed to their path often build networks that provide support without romantic complications. They share knowledge about efficient living, career strategies, and hobby resources. They encourage one another to maintain discipline in finances and health. They celebrate small victories that accumulate into significant life improvements. This community aspect grows organically as more individuals recognize shared experiences and common goals. It fills some of the social needs that relationships once addressed, but without the emotional volatility or financial risks. The focus remains on observable results rather than promises or external validation. Over time, this creates resilience that makes returning to old patterns even less appealing. Broader cultural reflections emerge as people process these shifts. Questions arise about what constitutes healthy partnership in modern contexts. Discussions explore how past movements influenced expectations around gender roles and responsibilities. Analysts examine economic data to understand how consumer behaviors signal deeper changes in life priorities. Young adults absorb these lessons, forming their own views about risk and reward in personal decisions. The conversation stays grounded in facts rather than ideology because reality eventually asserts itself through lived outcomes. Men who walked away did so based on direct experience and clear pattern recognition. Their continued absence sends a message that words alone cannot override. This transformation touches everything from daily routines to large scale economic forecasts. Individuals gain autonomy when they stop outsourcing their happiness to unstable dynamics. Societies face adjustments as demographic and spending patterns evolve. The key insight is that sustainable arrangements require genuine value exchange and mutual respect. When those elements erode, participants protect themselves by disengaging. Men found that protecting their peace delivered better results than persisting in unbalanced setups. Women are now confronting the downstream effects of that collective choice. The situation calls for honest assessment rather than blame or denial because the trends are measurable and persistent. Continuing this exploration, we see how the collapse affects different age groups in distinct ways. Younger men entering adulthood observe the experiences of older brothers and friends and adjust their expectations accordingly. They prioritize skill development and financial foundations before considering any serious commitments. They approach interactions with caution, learning from widespread stories of unbalanced efforts. Many choose to delay dating until they feel secure in their own stability. This creates a feedback loop where fewer active participants make the scene even more challenging for those who remain. The emphasis shifts towards self mastery and realistic goal setting rather than chasing idealized scenarios. Midlife men who have already walked away often report the strongest sense of liberation. They have accumulated enough life experience to recognize the patterns clearly. Past relationships or near misses taught them what to avoid. They redirect energy into careers or passions that were previously sidelined. Health improvements compound as stress decreases and routines stabilize. Financial trajectories strengthen when resources stay under personal control. Social lives simplify to quality over quantity with connections that add value without drama. These men become examples for others, showing that fulfillment does not require following conventional scripts when those scripts no longer serve. Older men reflect on decades of societal changes and see the long arc of shifting expectations. They recall times when roles felt more balanced and contributions were acknowledged differently. Many express relief at having stepped back before greater losses accumulated. They focus on legacy through personal achievements or mentoring rather than through family structures that proved risky. Their stories contribute to the collective knowledge base, helping younger generations navigate similar terrain with more awareness. On the other side, women in various life stages process the implications differently. Some in early adulthood double down on career and self development, hoping to achieve security independently. Others begin questioning the wisdom of prolonged selectivity as they observe shrinking options. Testimonials from those in their mid 30s, onward, often reveal lower thresholds for what they seek in partners, acknowledging that practical compatibility matters more than perfect checklists. The challenge lies in rebuilding trust in an environment where many men have already disengaged. Efforts to encourage participation meet skepticism rooted in past experiences. The path forward requires addressing root causes rather than surface symptoms if any reversal is possible. Economic analyses highlight how single populations influence markets. Disposable income flows toward categories that serve individual preferences, with growth in personal electronics, hobby equipment, solo travel options, and efficient living solutions. Sectors that depended on couple spending or male funded experiences face headwinds requiring adaptation. Real estate developers note demand for smaller units or shared facilities. Service industries adjust offerings to appeal to self sufficient consumers. These shifts are neither good nor bad in absolute terms, but they reflect real behavioral changes that ripple through supply chains and employment patterns. The psychological aspect deserves attention because humans are wired for connection, yet also capable of finding satisfaction in independence when circumstances warrant it. Men who chose this path often describe initial adjustment periods followed by increasing contentment as new habits form. They learn to meet their own emotional needs through productive activities and reliable friendships. They develop resilience against societal messaging that once pressured them toward specific lifestyles. The result is a more centered existence where decisions stem from internal values rather than external demands. This mental shift reinforces the behavioral one, creating a stable new equilibrium for many. Women experiencing the effects sometimes report mixed feelings. Freedom from certain expectations comes with the weight of full responsibility. Loneliness can surface even amid busy schedules when deeper companionship is absent. Financial pressures test resilience, especially during unexpected events. Some find fulfillment in redefined priorities, while others search for ways to re engage men on more equitable terms. The honest assessment is that both sides face trade offs in the current landscape. Sustainable solutions would involve recognizing the validity of male concerns and rebuilding frameworks that reward mutual contribution rather than extraction. As these trends continue, observers note the importance of accurate information over comforting narratives. Data on marriage rates, birth trends, consumer shifts, and self reported satisfaction levels paint a consistent picture of reconfiguration. Men walking away did not do so lightly, but based on accumulated evidence that traditional paths carried unacceptable risks for diminishing returns. Their focus on peace and self preservation has delivered measurable benefits in stability and well being for those who committed to the choice. Society is adapting gradually with new norms emerging around what constitutes success in personal life. The conversation benefits from straightforward acknowledgement of these realities without exaggeration or minimization. Men are not villains for choosing autonomy after years of unbalanced dynamics. Women are not villains for pursuing independence even when outcomes prove challenging. The system that shaped these choices contained flaws that became apparent over time. Correcting course requires honest dialogue that addresses incentives, fairness, and practical outcomes rather than assigning blanket blame. Individuals on all sides benefit from clear eyed decision making based on observable facts rather than outdated assumptions. Expanding on the daily impacts, we see how men in this mode structure their time differently. Mornings might involve focused work or exercise without the need to coordinate with another person's schedule. Meals become opportunities for nutrition and enjoyment tailored exactly to preferences. Evenings allow wind down routines that restore energy for the next day. Weekends open up for deeper dives into interests that were previously rushed or compromised. This control over time creates a sense of agency that many describe as profoundly satisfying after years of negotiation. Financial planning simplifies when goals center on personal milestones like debt reduction, skill acquisition, or retirement security. The absence of relationship related expenses frees capital for investments that compound over years. Health outcomes improve for many as stress from unbalanced interactions decreases. Sleep quality rises when minds are not occupied with unresolved conflicts or performance anxiety. Physical activity becomes consistent because it serves personal well being rather than appearance for others. Nutrition choices align with energy needs rather than social dining expectations. Mental health benefits from reduced exposure to environments where feedback felt constantly critical or unpredictable. The cumulative effect is a more robust foundation for long term functioning. Social dynamics evolve as well. Men form bonds based on shared activities and mutual respect without the layer of romantic expectation. Conversations focus on ideas, experiences, and practical advice rather than navigating emotional undercurrents. Support systems develop organically through consistent interaction in hobby groups, professional networks, or community settings. Loneliness is addressed through purposeful engagement rather than forced pairing. The distinction between being alone and feeling isolated becomes clear when life contains meaning and agency. For women, the adjustments involve practical strategies for stability. Career advancement takes on greater importance when it forms the primary income source. Budgeting skills sharpen to stretch resources across all necessities. Social circles expand to include diverse connections that provide companionship without dependency. Some explore skill building that increases earning potential or reduces living costs. Health maintenance becomes a priority to support independent living across decades. The challenge is balancing these efforts with any desire for partnership in an environment where male participation has decreased. Broader implications touch policy discussions around family support, housing affordability, and economic incentives. Planners consider how to encourage stable formations without ignoring legitimate concerns from participants. Educational systems reflect on preparing young people for realistic adult landscapes. Cultural narratives evolve to incorporate the experiences of those who chose different paths. The goal is creating conditions where voluntary engagement can flourish based on mutual benefit rather than coercion or unrealistic expectations. This situation represents a wake up call for anyone paying attention. The collapse of the simp economy did not occur in isolation, but as the logical outcome of years of incentives and messaging. Men responded rationally to the environment they encountered. Their withdrawal created space for self reflection on both sides. The future will depend on how honestly societies address the root issues and whether new models emerge that restore balance. In the meantime, individuals continue making choices that align with their observed reality and personal values. The men who walked away found peace in that alignment, and many show no intention of reversing course. The intensity of the shift becomes clearer when examining specific sectors. Take the hospitality and entertainment industries that once counted on male spending to facilitate dates or group outings. When fewer men initiate those activities, the foot traffic changes. Restaurants that thrived on couple reservations see adjustments in peak times or menu focuses. Event planners notice different demographics attending functions. Travel packages shift towards solo or small group options rather than romantic escapes. These adaptations are normal market responses to changing demand, but they signal deeper behavioral transformations. Retail environments reflect similar patterns. Stores that catered to gift giving or couple shopping experience softer sales in certain categories, while those offering tools, tech, or hobby supplies see steadier business. Fashion trends may lean toward practical, durable items rather than occasion specific outfits. Home goods focus on efficient, single person living solutions. The data accumulates, showing how personal choices aggregate into economic signals that businesses must heed. Demographic experts track the long term effects on population structure. Lower partnership rates correlate with delayed or reduced childbearing, which impacts future workforce sizes and dependency ratios. Social security systems designed around traditional family models face pressures when fewer contributors support more retirees through different living arrangements. Urban planning considers housing needs for larger single populations, including affordability and community design that supports independent living. These are not abstract concerns, but practical matters that affect infrastructure and public budgets. Educational institutions observe changes in student motivations and career goals. Young men may prioritize fields that offer clear paths to self sufficiency. Young women focus on credentials that ensure financial independence. Curricula evolve to include practical life skills that prepare for varied adult realities. The emphasis on critical thinking helps individuals evaluate cultural messages against personal experience. Media representations begin incorporating these trends, sometimes highlighting success stories of independent living and other times exploring the challenges. Public discourse includes more voices sharing unfiltered perspectives on what works and what does not in modern relationships. The goal is greater understanding rather than perpetuating divisions. Men who maintain this path often emphasize the importance of discipline and consistency. They set boundaries around their time and energy, protecting the peace they work to achieve. They evaluate opportunities based on whether they add genuine value or introduce unnecessary complications. This selective approach extends to consumption, relationships, and commitments of all kinds. The result is a more intentional life that aligns actions with core priorities. Women adapting to the new landscape similarly benefit from clear priorities. They assess what truly contributes to long term stability and fulfillment. Some build robust support networks that provide emotional and practical assistance. Others focus intensely on career or creative pursuits that bring intrinsic satisfaction. The common thread is taking ownership of outcomes rather than expecting external rescue. The overall picture is one of transition, where old assumptions give way to new realities based on lived experience. Men walking away did not do so to punish, but to preserve their well being. Their example encourages others to evaluate their own situations honestly. Societies that acknowledge these dynamics can work toward arrangements that respect individual agency while fostering conditions for voluntary cooperation. The process is ongoing, but the direction is set by millions of personal decisions grounded in observable truth. Continuing deeper into the implications, we can see how this affects everything from personal finance strategies to community building efforts. Men who have embraced self directed living often adopt conservative spending habits that prioritize assets over liabilities. They invest in tools and knowledge that increase their capabilities rather than status symbols designed for external approval. Savings rates improve when there are no additional dependents or lifestyle expectations to maintain. Debt avoidance becomes a guiding principle because financial freedom supports the autonomy they value. Over time, this compounds into greater security that buffers against economic fluctuations. Community initiatives may adapt by creating spaces that welcome singles without assuming couple or family structures. Hobby clubs, skill sharing workshops, and volunteer opportunities provide avenues for connection based on common interests. These settings allow natural interactions without the pressure of romantic pursuit. Participants build friendships that enrich life without complicating it. The emphasis stays on contribution and mutual respect, which creates healthier social environments. Healthcare systems notice patterns in utilization as lifestyles change. Reduced stress from certain relationship dynamics can lower incidence of stress-related conditions for those who disengaged. Preventive care becomes more proactive when individuals take full responsibility for their well-being. Mental health resources expand to support people navigating transitions in life structure, whether toward independence or adjusted partnership models. The data helps tailor services to actual needs rather than outdated assumptions. Workplace cultures evolve as employees bring different priorities. Some men focus intensely on a career advancement, knowing their efforts directly benefit their own stability. Others seek roles that allow better work life balance for personal pursuits. Employers notice shifts in retention and motivation when traditional incentives tied to family provision lose relevance for portions of the workforce. Flexible arrangements gain appeal as more people structure life around individual rather than couple centered needs. Educational outcomes reflect these broader changes. Students exposed to real world examples of different life paths make more informed choices about their futures. Programs that teach financial literacy, emotional regulation, and practical skills gain importance because they prepare individuals for self reliance. Critical analysis of cultural narratives helps young people separate hype from reality when evaluating relationship expectations. The cultural conversation benefits when it includes diverse experiences without judgment. Stories of men finding satisfaction in solitude challenge assumptions that partnership is the only path to fulfillment. Accounts from women building successful independent lives highlight resilience and capability. Narratives of couples who maintain balance despite broader trends show that healthy models still exist when both parties commit to fairness. The full picture emerges from honest sharing rather than selective emphasis. Economic modeling incorporates these behavioral shifts to forecast consumption, savings, and investment patterns. Analysts track how redirected male spending influences sector growth. They examine the resilience of single person households under varying economic conditions. Policy recommendations consider incentives that align with actual participant preferences rather than idealized scenarios. The approach stays data driven to avoid unintended consequences. Personal development resources expand to address the needs of those choosing non traditional paths. Books, workshops, and online content focus on building self sufficiency, managing solitude productively, and maintaining motivation without external validation. These tools help individuals maximize the benefits of their choices while mitigating potential downsides. The emphasis is on practical strategies that deliver results. As more people adopt these approaches, the collective experience grows, creating a knowledge base that benefits newcomers. Forums and informal networks share tips on efficient living, career navigation, and social connection. The wisdom accumulated through trial and error accelerates learning for others. This organic development of support structures demonstrates human adaptability when facing changed circumstances. The sobering aspect is recognizing that these shifts stem from real imbalances that accumulated over time. Ignoring them would only prolong the adjustment period. Facing them directly allows for constructive responses that respect the agency of all involved. Men who walked away taught a lesson through their actions that words could not convey. Their continued focus on peace sends a clear signal about what they value. Societies that heed that signal can foster environments where participation becomes attractive again based on genuine mutual benefit. Women confronting these realities have opportunities to demonstrate strength through adaptation. By acknowledging the validity of male experiences, they open doors to rebuilding trust. Focusing on self development and practical contributions enhances their position regardless of partnership status. The path involves balancing independence with openness to collaboration when conditions support it. The larger story is one of human beings responding to their environment in predictable ways when incentives align with self interest. The collapse of the simp economy revealed underlying weaknesses in previous models. The men who chose to walk away found better alternatives for themselves. Their example continues to influence others, creating a wave of change that reshapes norms gradually but persistently. The truth remains straightforward. When people feel consistently undervalued or overburdened, they protect themselves by stepping back. Lasting solutions require addressing those feelings with actions that restore balance rather than demanding return without change. This brings us to the heart of sustainable living in the current era. Individuals thrive when they align their efforts with reality rather than fighting against it. Men discovered that directing energy inward yielded peace and progress. Women can find similar fulfillment by embracing full ownership of their outcomes. Societies progress when they create conditions that encourage voluntary cooperation based on respect and reciprocity. The current transition tests that understanding, but also offers chances to build stronger foundations for the future. Exploring further the personal level, we see how routines solidify into lifestyles that feel natural after the initial adjustment. Men report that mornings become opportunities for focused intention setting without distractions. Physical training integrates as a non negotiable part of maintaining capability and mood stability. Meals turn into simple rituals of nourishment that support energy levels throughout demanding days. Work periods benefit from undivided attention, leading to higher productivity and satisfaction from accomplishments. Evenings allow reflection and wind down that recharge for tomorrow rather than carrying over unresolved tensions. Weekends provide space for deeper engagement with passions, whether creative projects, outdoor exploration, or skill refinement. This structure creates a rhythm that supports long term well being without the volatility of mismatched expectations. Financial habits reinforce this stability. Budgets allocate resources toward growth areas like education, equipment, or savings vehicles that increase options over time. Debt is minimized because it represents reduced freedom. Investments target assets that generate returns or utility directly for the owner. Tracking expenses becomes second nature, ensuring alignment between spending and values. The psychological benefit of financial control adds to the overall sense of agency that makes the lifestyle sustainable. Social interactions gain quality when freed from romantic pressures. Conversations flow more naturally around shared topics without underlying agendas. Activities are chosen for enjoyment rather than impression. Feedback is honest because stakes are lower. Friendships deepen through consistent reliability rather than grand gestures. The support network that forms provides camaraderie without the emotional labor often associated with intimate partnerships. Loneliness is countered through purposeful engagement that adds value to all parties. Health markers improve under these conditions for many. Consistent sleep schedules regulate bodily functions effectively. Nutrition choices focus on performance and longevity rather than convenience or social signaling. Movement becomes integrated into daily life, supporting both physical and mental resilience. Stress management techniques develop from the need to maintain equilibrium independently. Regular checkups serve as maintenance rather than reaction to crises. The body and mind respond positively to this stewardship, creating a virtuous cycle of capability and confidence. For women navigating parallel but distinct challenges, the focus often centers on creating robust personal infrastructures. Income streams are diversified where possible to buffer against single income vulnerabilities. Living arrangements are optimized for efficiency and comfort within available means. Networks of friends and mentors provide advice and assistance that replace some traditional support roles. Skill development targets areas that enhance both employability and daily competence. Health practices emphasize prevention, knowing that self care falls entirely on individual initiative. The approach builds resilience that serves well, regardless of future relationship status. The economic landscape continues evolving in response to these millions of individual decisions. Markets for solo living products expand with innovations in compact furniture, efficient appliances, and personal wellness items. Service industries adapt to cater to time poor but financially stable singles seeking convenience without commitment. Leisure sectors grow around individual hobbies from specialized equipment to experience based offerings that do not require partners. The data shows clear redirection of spending power that savvy businesses follow. Demographic Trends project continued shifts with implications for everything from school enrollments to retirement funding. Lower birth numbers in many regions prompt discussions about immigration, automation, and productivity enhancements to maintain economic vitality. Housing policies consider the needs of larger single and small household populations, including affordability measures and community designs that reduce isolation. Social programs evaluate sustainability when family units provide less informal care and support. Cultural products reflect these changes through stories that explore independence, resilience, and redefine success. Music, literature, and film portray characters finding meaning in varied life structures. Public figures share experiences that normalize different paths. The collective narrative broadens to include the full range of human adaptation rather than promoting one ideal. Educational efforts increasingly emphasize practical preparation for adult realities. Financial education covers budgeting, investing, and risk assessment tailored to different life scenarios. Emotional intelligence training helps individuals manage internal states and interpersonal dynamics effectively. Critical thinking skills enable evaluation of cultural messages against evidence. Life skills courses address everything from basic maintenance to long term planning, fostering self reliance. Policy conversations grapple with balancing individual freedoms and societal needs. Incentives for family formation are weighed against concerns about coercion or unfair burdens. Legal frameworks around partnership and dissolution are examined for equity and predictability that encourage participation. Support systems evolve to assist those in transitional or non traditional arrangements without disincentivizing responsibility. The men who pioneered this path through their choices deserve recognition for demonstrating that alternative models can deliver satisfaction. Their steadfast focus on peace amid external pressures shows strength of character. By refusing to participate in setups that devalued their contributions, they forced a reckoning with underlying issues. Their continued success in self directed living provides living proof that fulfillment is possible outside conventional scripts when those scripts fail to serve. Women who rise to the occasion by building capable, independent lives similarly show adaptability and determination. Their efforts to create stability despite challenges highlight inner resources that societies benefit from cultivating. When they engage honestly with the reasons for male withdrawal, they contribute to potential solutions that respect all perspectives. The road ahead involves continued honest assessment and adjustment. Trends will persist as long as the conditions that produce them remain. Positive change comes from addressing root causes with practical measures that restore balance and fairness. Individuals on all sides benefit from approaching the situation with clear eyes and willingness to adapt based on results rather than ideology. This reality serves as a sobering reminder that actions have consequences and that ignoring patterns does not make them disappear. The collapse of the simp economy exposed vulnerabilities in previous assumptions about gender dynamics and provision. The men who walked away followed logic and self preservation to a better personal equilibrium. Their example continues influencing the broader culture, creating space for new understandings of what constitutes a worthwhile life. As we move through this transition, the emphasis stays on truth and practicality. Men found peace by focusing inward. Women face the task of building resilience in a changed landscape. Societies adjust to the aggregate choices of their members. The process is neither quick nor painless, but it offers opportunities for growth when approached with honesty. The core lesson is that sustainable relationships and social structures require mutual value and respect. When those elements are present, participation follows naturally. When they are absent, people protect themselves, and that protection takes the form of walking away towards something better. The intensity of these changes will continue manifesting in measurable ways across economies and cultures. Each sector, from consumer goods to public services, will respond according to the behaviors it observes. Individuals will keep making decisions based on their direct experiences and the patterns they recognize. The men who chose solitude are not returning because the peace they found outweighs the uncertainties they left behind. Women learning this truth have the chance to forge paths that honor their capabilities while acknowledging new realities. The conversation remains open to those willing to engage with facts rather than fantasies. Further reflection reveals how this shift encourages a return to basics in many areas of life. Men simplify their environments, removing elements that do not serve clear purposes. They value durability and utility in possessions over trends or appearances. Time allocation prioritizes activities with direct returns in satisfaction or capability. Relationships of all kinds are evaluated for reciprocity and reliability. The minimalist approach extends beyond objects to commitments and mental clutter, creating space for what truly matters. Women adapting similarly often discover strengths in managing full responsibilities. They develop expertise in areas previously shared or outsourced. Decision making becomes more autonomous with confidence built through repeated practice. Support systems are cultivated intentionally rather than assumed. The process builds character and competence that enhances overall life quality. Communities that embrace these diverse paths become more resilient. They offer multiple models of successful living rather than pressuring conformity to one. Resources are allocated based on actual needs across different household types. Social events accommodate varied participation levels without exclusion. The result is a richer tapestry of human experience that accommodates different preferences and circumstances. Economic innovation follows demand with new products and services designed for independent living. Technology enables greater self sufficiency through smart home solutions, online learning platforms, and remote work opportunities. Financial tools evolve to support single person wealth building with tailored savings and investment options. The market responds to real behaviors, creating opportunities for those who anticipate trends. The demographic conversation expands beyond numbers to quality of life considerations. How do people find meaning and connection in varied structures? What policies support well being across different life choices? How can societies maintain vitality when family formation rates change? Honest answers require input from those actually living these realities rather than theoretical ideals. Educational reforms that prepare students for this landscape emphasize adaptability, financial competence, and emotional regulation. Young people learn to assess situations realistically and make choices aligned with their values and capabilities. They develop skills for both independent and collaborative success, recognizing that different phases of life may call for different approaches. The cultural output that emerges from this period captures the complexity of human adaptation. Stories explore themes of self discovery, resilience, redefined relationships, and the search for authentic fulfillment. They reflect the full spectrum of experiences without forcing neat resolutions. Audiences connect with portrayals that mirror their own observations of the world. Policymakers who listen to ground level realities can craft approaches that encourage positive outcomes without ignoring trade offs. Support for families can coexist with respect for individual choices. Legal clarity in partnership matters, reduces risk, and increases willingness to engage. Economic measures that improve affordability for young adults address practical barriers to formation without mandating specific paths. The men who walked away demonstrated courage in choosing a less traveled road when the main path proved unsustainable for them. Their lives stand as testament to the power of pattern recognition and self trust. By focusing on peace, they modeled a form of strength that benefits personal well being and indirectly challenges societies to improve conditions for voluntary participation. Women who meet the moment with determination and honesty contribute to the evolution of healthier dynamics. Their adaptations show that capability exists beyond traditional support structures. When they engage with the reasons behind male withdrawal, they help create conditions where trust can be rebuilt on more solid ground. The broader movement toward truth and practicality in these matters serves everyone in the long run. Illusions give way to workable realities. Blame yields to understanding and adjustment. Individuals gain agency when they base decisions on facts rather than hopes. Societies strengthen when they align structures with the behaviors and needs of their members. This ongoing process of change and adaptation highlights the enduring human capacity to respond to circumstances with creativity and resolve. The collapse of the simp economy marked a turning point where old incentives lost power and new priorities emerged. Men found value in self directed living. Women confront the full weight of independence. Societies adjust their expectations and supports accordingly. The truth is straightforward even when uncomfortable. People act in their perceived best interest based on experience. When those interests align with mutual benefit, cooperation flourishes. When they diverge, protection and separation follow. The current landscape reflects that dynamic in action across millions of lives. Continuing this examination, we see how daily decision making reflects these larger shifts. Men prioritize activities that deliver consistent returns in energy, skill, or satisfaction. They choose environments that support focus and calm rather than constant stimulation or conflict. Financial choices favor control and growth over immediate gratification tied to social display. Social engagements are selected for genuine connection rather than obligation. The cumulative effect is a life that feels owned rather than borrowed or performed. Women building parallel structures often emphasize diversification of resources and skills. They cultivate networks that provide practical and emotional backup. Career paths are evaluated for long term viability and flexibility. Personal habits focus on sustainability across decades of potential independent living. The approach combines realism with optimism grounded in capability rather than expectation. Communities that thrive in this environment offer inclusive spaces for varied life stages and structures. They facilitate connections based on interest and contribution. Resources are distributed according to demonstrated needs. Cultural events celebrate different forms of achievement and connection. The social fabric becomes more flexible while maintaining core values of respect and reciprocity. Economic sectors continue realigning with observable demand. Innovation targets efficiency and personalization for individual consumers. Service models adapt to time constrained yet self aware customers. Investment flows toward areas that support autonomous living and personal development. The market mechanism reveals preferences more clearly when behaviors are unconstrained by outdated norms. Demographic planning incorporates flexibility to handle diverse household formations. Infrastructure projects consider accessibility and community for singles alongside families. Educational investments prepare for multiple viable paths to adult success. Social safety nets evolve to support transitions without creating dependency traps that discourage responsibility. Cultural narratives that resonate capture the nuance of contemporary life. They portray characters navigating choice and consequence with honesty. Themes of self mastery, honest relationships, and societal adaptation recur because they mirror widespread experiences. Audiences find value in stories that validate their observations while suggesting constructive ways forward. Policy discussions benefit from grounding in empirical trends rather than ideological preferences. Measures that reduce barriers to stable formation can coexist with protections for individual autonomy. Legal predictability in family matters encourages participation by lowering perceived risks. Economic policies that support affordability address root causes of delay in major life steps. The pioneers of this male withdrawal showed that stepping back can be an act of self respect rather than retreat. Their sustained peace demonstrates the viability of alternative approaches when conventional ones fail to deliver. Their influence persists through example, encouraging others to evaluate their own situations with similar clarity. Women who adapt successfully prove that strength manifests in many forms, including the quiet determination to build life on one's own terms. Their contributions to evolving norms come through lived competence and honest dialogue about what works. The collective journey involves learning from outcomes and adjusting accordingly. Truth serves as the foundation because it aligns expectations with reality. Practicality guides actions because it produces sustainable results. Respect for agency allows individuals to chart paths that fit their values and circumstances. The resulting society, while different from past models, can still offer fulfillment when built on solid principles. This sobering wake up call reminds us that ignoring imbalances leads to corrective forces that can be disruptive but ultimately clarifying. The men who walked away responded to those forces by choosing peace. Their choice created space for reflection and reconfiguration. The future will be shaped by how well we learn from this period and apply the lessons toward more balanced and honest arrangements. The truth stands clear. People seek environments where their efforts are valued and their well being protected. When those conditions exist, participation follows. When they do not, alternatives emerge. The current landscape is the result of that eternal dynamic playing out in modern form. Expanding on these themes further reveals layers of impact on everything from personal identity to institutional trust. Men who embrace this path often report a strengthened sense of self that comes from defining success on their own terms. They no longer measure worth through external validation or material provision for others. Identity becomes rooted in competence, discipline, and personal integrity. This internal locus of control provides stability during external uncertainties. It allows for growth that is not contingent on relationship status or social approval. The confidence that develops translates into better decision making across life domains. Women undertaking similar internal work discover depths of capability that external support might have masked. They confront limitations honestly and build around strengths. Identity evolves to encompass provider, protector, and nurturer roles in new configurations. The process can be challenging, but ultimately empowering when it leads to genuine self knowledge. Trust and personal judgment increases as experience accumulates. The resulting sense of agency serves as a foundation for whatever future paths unfold. Institutional trust erodes when systems appear biased or unresponsive to legitimate concerns. Men who felt family courts or social policies disadvantaged them without cause lost faith in those structures. Women who expected support that never materialized similarly question reliability. Rebuilding requires transparency, fairness, and accountability that match rhetoric with results. When institutions demonstrate consistent equity, they regain credibility. Until then, individuals rely more on personal networks and self reliance. Community level responses vary, but successful ones emphasize practical help over judgment. Local groups organize skill shares, resource exchanges, and social activities that accommodate different life structures. They create belonging without requiring conformity. Volunteer efforts address gaps in traditional support systems. The focus on contribution fosters mutual respect and reduces isolation for all participants. Technological tools amplify individual capabilities in this environment. Apps for budgeting, skill learning, health tracking, and social connection help manage independent living effectively. Online communities provide information and support tailored to specific needs. Remote work options increase flexibility for balancing income and personal time. These developments reduce some traditional barriers to autonomy, making self directed paths more viable. The psychological literature on well being supports the observation that meaning and mastery contribute significantly to life satisfaction. Men who found purpose in personal projects or skill development report higher contentment despite lower social conformity. Women who master self management often describe similar fulfillment from competence and growth. Connection remains important, but its form can vary from deep friendships to casual shared interests. The key is alignment between needs and actual provisions rather than idealized expectations. Economic theories of rational choice help explain the observed behaviors. When the expected utility of traditional partnership falls below that of single living rational actors adjust. Costs include financial outlays, time commitments, emotional labor, and opportunity risks. Benefits must outweigh those for participation to make sense. When cultural or legal factors increase costs or decrease benefits, the calculus shifts. Understanding this dynamic allows for targeted interventions that improve the equation without coercion. And demographic science tracks how these individual choices aggregate into population level changes. Marriage and birth rates reflect the sum of personal decisions influenced by economic, social, and cultural factors. Projections help plan for infrastructure, education, and pension systems, but they also highlight the need for adaptability when behaviors change. Policies that ignore the reasons behind trends are less likely to succeed than those that address underlying drivers. Cultural anthropology offers perspective on how societies have managed gender roles and family structures across history. Different eras and regions developed models suited to their material conditions and values. Modern industrialized societies face unique combinations of abundance, longevity, and technological change that alter traditional incentives. Adaptation is normal rather than failure. The current period represents one such adjustment phase where old models lose fit and new ones emerge through experimentation. Philosophical reflections on freedom and responsibility provide ethical grounding for these discussions. Individuals have the right to pursue happiness through means that do not harm others. They also bear responsibility for the consequences of their choices. Societies benefit when members exercise both freedom and responsibility in ways that sustain the common good. Balancing these elements requires ongoing dialogue and practical wisdom rather than rigid prescriptions. The men who walked away exercised their freedom to step back from arrangements that no longer served them. They accepted responsibility for their own well being and found it liberating. Their actions prompted society to confront questions about what it owes its members and what members owe each other. The resulting conversation, if conducted honestly, can lead to more resilient social contracts. Women exercising similar freedom in building independent lives demonstrate responsibility for their outcomes. Their successes and struggles both inform the broader understanding of human potential and limitation. By sharing experiences openly, they contribute to collective learning that benefits future generations. The path forward involves integrating these insights into practical frameworks, education that prepares people for real world dynamics, policies that reduce unnecessary risks in family formation, cultural narratives that value contribution and character over superficial traits, economic conditions that make stability attainable for responsible adults. When these elements align, voluntary partnerships become more common because they make sense for participants. Until then, the trends continue with men maintaining focus on personal peace and women navigating the realities of full independence. Both paths offer opportunities for growth when approached with truth and determination. The sobering aspect is the recognition that change at this scale takes time and requires willingness to learn from outcomes. The hopeful aspect is the human capacity to adapt, innovate, and find meaning in varied circumstances. This extended examination of the dynamics at play reveals the depth and breadth of the transformation underway. From individual routines to global economic patterns, the effects are interconnected and significant. The core remains the straightforward truth that men walked away because the previous setup stopped working for them. They found better alternatives in self directed living. Women are now experiencing the full implications of that collective decision. Societies are adjusting accordingly. The process is raw but clarifying. It forces honest reckoning with what actually sustains healthy relationships and functional communities. The men who chose peace are not looking back because the view from where they stand is one of clarity and control. Their example stands as a powerful illustration of human agency in action. The rest of us can learn from it by facing reality squarely and building accordingly. The intensity builds when considering how these patterns affect future generations. Young boys observing male role models who prioritize peace and self reliance may internalize different expectations about their own paths. They see competence and calm as attractive traits rather than constant provision. Young girls, witnessing women managing independent lives, may develop greater appreciation for self sufficiency while still desiring partnership on equitable terms. The modeling that occurs through everyday examples shapes aspirations and behaviors more powerfully than abstract advice. Educational environments that reflect these realities can prepare students more effectively. Curricula that include financial responsibility, emotional regulation, conflict resolution, and critical evaluation of social norms equip young people to make informed choices. Discussions about incentives and trade offs in relationships foster realistic expectations. Skill building in practical areas supports autonomy regardless of eventual life structure. The goal is empowerment through knowledge rather than protection from uncomfortable truths. Workforce dynamics continue evolving as participants bring different priorities. Employers who offer flexibility, fair compensation, and clear advancement paths attract talent motivated by self interest rather than external pressures. Corporate cultures that respect personal boundaries and value contribution over performative loyalty retain employees longer. The shift toward results oriented evaluation benefits those who deliver regardless of personal circumstances. Health systems that recognize lifestyle diversity can provide tailored support. Preventive programs that emphasize self management skills help individuals maintain wellness across different living arrangements. Mental health resources that address transition challenges without pathologizing choice support adaptation. Community based initiatives that reduce isolation through shared activities contribute to overall well being. The media landscape plays a role by either clarifying or confusing these issues. Content that presents balanced perspectives based on evidence helps audiences navigate complexity. Sensational approaches that amplify division or denial prolong problems. Responsible storytelling that explores real experiences with nuance contributes to collective understanding. Legal frameworks that provide predictability and fairness in family matters reduce perceived risks for all parties. Clear guidelines around asset division, custody, and support encourage responsible behavior by aligning incentives with outcomes. Reforms that address documented imbalances can restore confidence in the system. Economic policies that improve housing affordability, wage growth, and cost of living directly impact the feasibility of stable partnerships. When young adults can establish independent foundations, they are better positioned to consider family formation without desperation or delay. Support for small businesses and skill development expands opportunities for self sufficiency. Cultural institutions, including religious and civic organizations, can contribute by promoting values of responsibility, respect, and mutual benefit. They offer spaces for community that transcend individual household structures. Programs that teach practical wisdom for modern life help bridge generational gaps in understanding. The men who walked away did not set out to change society, but their collective actions achieved that effect. By choosing peace, they highlighted problems that needed attention. Their sustained absence keeps those problems visible. The response from women and institutions will determine whether the trends stabilize or accelerate. Honest engagement with the reasons for withdrawal offers the best chance for constructive evolution. Women who choose to adapt by focusing on genuine compatibility and personal growth position themselves well for whatever the future holds. Their efforts demonstrate that agency works in both directions. When they model resilience and fairness, they contribute to healthier dynamics overall. The sobering wake up call is that reality does not negotiate with wishes. The patterns that led to this point were observable for years. The men who acted on them found relief. The women now facing the consequences have the opportunity to respond with similar clarity. Societies that learn from the experience can build more robust structures for the next chapter. The truth is raw, but it points toward practical solutions when embraced fully. Peace comes from alignment with reality rather than resistance to it. The men who walked away understood that. Their example continues to teach. This narrative of change and adaptation unfolds across countless individual lives, each contributing to the larger picture. The intensity of the shift matches the depth of the imbalances that preceded it. The straightforward path forward involves acknowledging what happened, understanding why, and building accordingly. Men found value in solitude and self focus. Women confront the costs of full independence. Both can thrive when they operate from truth and capability. The future belongs to those who face it squarely. The exploration of these themes could continue indefinitely because the implications touch every aspect of human organization. From the most personal daily habits to the broadest policy questions, the effects are profound and interconnected. The core premise remains consistent. Men walked away because the alternative no longer made sense. They discovered peace in that choice. The rest of society is now catching up to the reality they recognized earlier. The process is ongoing, but the direction is set by observable behaviors and rational responses. Truth and practicality will guide those who seek sustainable outcomes. The men who chose this path are living proof that alternatives exist and can deliver satisfaction. Their story serves as both warning and invitation to build better. The numbers coming out of places like China hit like a cold splash of reality that nobody wants to admit is spreading everywhere else too. In 2024 and into 2025, marriage registrations there crashed to just 6.1 million couples, which represents a 20.5% drop from the year before and marks the lowest figure since records began back in the late 1980s. That is not some minor fluctuation. It is a structural collapse where the pool of people, even considering tying the knot, has shrunk dramatically, with first marriages falling below 10 million for the first time in a decade. Birth rates followed the same downward path, with post 2000 generations averaging only about half the numbers of earlier cohorts, meaning the next wave of potential partners is even smaller. What this creates is a feedback loop where fewer marriages lead to fewer births, which then reduces the eligible population further, and the economic weight of that shift starts crushing entire sectors that once counted on traditional spending patterns. Men in those urban centers, especially those hitting their 30s and 40s, started doing the math on what marriage actually costs in real terms. Expectations around providing housing, a vehicle, and significant bride price contributions often push the total into the hundreds of thousands of yuan before even factoring in ceremony expenses or future child rearing, which can run into millions per kid. When average disposable income sits around 30,000 yuan per year, for many the equation simply does not balance, especially when divorce outcomes frequently leave men with heavy financial losses and limited ongoing involvement with children. Rural men in smaller towns faced even steeper barriers, with gender imbalances leaving millions more men than women in the overall population, and many simply gave up on the pursuit altogether. Urban men who stayed in the game longer became more selective, realizing that the risks of transactional arrangements outweighed the potential rewards of companionship or family building. They watched peers pour resources into dates, gifts, and lifestyle maintenance, only to encounter shifting demands or sudden endings that left them drained. The response was a collective step back where men redirected their earnings toward personal stability rather than subsidizing someone else's expectations. This redirection shows up clearly in consumer data that reveals the old simp economy losing ground fast. Beverage chains that thrived on frequent purchases during group outings or romantic gestures reported sharp profit drops, with one major player losing hundreds of millions in revenue and another closing thousands of locations after profits plunged by 60%. Film box office numbers during peak couple oriented holidays fell to fractions of previous years, with some events dropping from over 500 million yuan down to around 360 million. Tourism, tied heavily to female driven consumption, and couple travel started softening because men stopped volunteering as the default funders for those experiences. The chain reaction is straightforward when men stop initiating and covering those costs. The businesses built around that behavior feel the pain immediately and they adjust by scaling back or pivoting entirely. Meanwhile, sectors catering to solo male interests began expanding with fishing equipment and outdoor gear, seeing steady 7% annual growth projections as the number of active participants climbed into the hundreds of millions. Gaming hardware sales held firm or grew as men chose personal entertainment setups over phones or gifts designed to impress. The pattern is that money previously funneled outward for validation or obligation now stays inside, supporting hobbies that deliver direct personal satisfaction without the overhead of negotiation or disappointment. Women in their mid 30s and beyond started voicing the consequences in very public ways through matchmaking events and online testimonials that paint a picture of revised expectations meeting a much thinner pool of willing participants. Stories emerged of highly educated professionals in their mid 30s describing themselves as lower tier options in the current market despite strong careers because age and past selectivity narrowed their appeal. Some admitted following earlier advice about prioritizing independence and delaying commitment, only to reach a point where they lowered standards dramatically, seeking any man of decent character without the previous demands for luxury or provision. Matchmaking parks and agencies reported overwhelming numbers of female registrants to the point where some locations suspended additional signups for women because the imbalance became unmanageable. The pressure intensified around fertility timelines, with parents urging action before 30, yet many women found that the men they once overlooked had either opted out or set their own firmer boundaries. The regret expressed in these accounts often centered on realizing too late that the independence narrative left them carrying full financial and emotional loads without the shared buffer that partnerships once provided. They faced housing costs that consumed massive portions of income, with single women in some analyses spending up to 92% of earnings just on shelter and maintenance compared to married couples who split burdens and kept that figure closer to 40%. The same dynamics play out beyond any single country because the underlying incentives look similar across developed economies. In the United States and Europe, marriage rates have trended downward for decades, with crude rates falling from 8 per thousand in earlier periods to around 4 per thousand in recent years. Single adults, especially women, report significantly higher struggles with housing affordability, where 64% in some surveys say they have difficulty covering rent or mortgage compared to 39% of married respondents. Income gaps compound the issue, with nearly half of singles earning under $50,000 annually versus far fewer married households in that bracket. Married couples benefit from combined earnings that push median household income into the 135,000 to 145,000 range for dual earners, while sole providers or singles lag substantially. Poverty rates tell an even starker story, with single mothers facing 28% official poverty levels compared to just 5% for married parents. These figures are not abstract. They translate into tighter budgets, thinner emergency reserves, and greater reliance on public assistance when private support networks shrink. Men who stepped away described the decision as a rational response to survival pressures in an economy where basic costs like rent, food, and transportation already consume most of their paycheck. Many work multiple jobs or side hustles just to stay afloat, leaving zero margin for the repeated expenses of dating, such as meals outings or gifts that rarely lead to balanced reciprocity. The energy required to keep initiating conversations, planning activities, and proving worth feels exhausting when daily life already demands constant hustle. They notice that women often assess long term viability quickly and exit if the fit seems uncertain, while men frequently assume failure upfront to avoid further investment. Over time, the pattern recognition kicks in, where repeated cycles of effort, followed by ghosting rejection or mismatched expectations, teach men that peace comes from conserving resources rather than expending them on uncertain outcomes. They turn inward building routines around fitness skill development or low cost hobbies that restore energy instead of depleting it. Sleep improves because nights are not spent replaying interactions or worrying about the next demand. Financial decisions simplify when every dollar stays under personal control, allowing gradual buildup of savings or investments that create real security. This inward focus does not mean isolation in the negative sense, but rather a deliberate choice for environments that support clarity and control. Men form connections through shared activities like sports leagues, gaming communities, or outdoor groups where the bond comes from mutual interest rather than romantic pressure. These relationships provide camaraderie and practical support without the volatility that often accompanies dating dynamics. They learn to meet their own emotional needs through productive outlets that build confidence and pride. The distinction between solitude and loneliness becomes obvious when life contains purpose and self directed progress. Many report that the mental load lightens dramatically once they stop navigating mixed signals or performing for approval. Stress from financial obligations tied to someone else's lifestyle disappears, and that relief compounds into better overall health and decision making. The lifestyle that emerges is minimalist by design, cutting away elements that once created chaos and keeping only what adds verifiable value. Women confronting the reality of these shifts often adjust their own strategies in practical ways that acknowledge the changed landscape. Career focus intensifies because it forms the backbone of financial independence, with emphasis on skills that increase earning potential or provide flexibility. Budgeting becomes more disciplined to stretch resources across all necessities without expecting external contributions. Social networks expand to include reliable friends and mentors who offer advice and assistance in areas once handled within partnerships. Health practices prioritize prevention and maintenance, knowing that long term well being depends entirely on personal initiative. Some women broaden their criteria for potential partners, recognizing that practical compatibility and character matter more than idealized checklists that previously filtered out most options. The challenge remains rebuilding trust in an environment where many men have already established boundaries and show little interest in returning to old roles. Efforts to encourage participation through lowered demands or public appeals meet skepticism because past experiences left deep impressions of imbalance and risk. The broader economic restructuring that follows these personal choices affects industries in predictable ways. Real estate developers notice softening demand for large family oriented homes in certain markets, while interest grows in smaller, efficient units or shared living concepts suited to singles. Consumer goods shift toward durable, practical items that serve individual needs rather than couple or family displays. Service sectors adapt by offering convenience options for time constrained, self managing adults. Investment patterns change as capital flows toward areas supporting autonomous living, such as personal technology, wellness tools, or hobby related equipment. Governments tracking these trends see implications for future tax revenues, workforce sizes, and social program demands when family units provide less informal buffering against hardships. Birth rate declines compound the pressure on pension and healthcare systems designed around higher population growth assumptions. The adjustments required are not quick fixes, but long term realignments that reflect millions of individual calculations about risk and reward. Younger generations entering adulthood absorb these lessons through direct observation of older siblings and peers. Boys see men around them prioritizing self development and peace, and they model similar caution around commitment. Girls witness women managing full independence, and they develop greater appreciation for building personal capability while still hoping for equitable partnerships. Educational systems that incorporate realistic preparation help by teaching financial literacy, emotional regulation, and critical evaluation of social expectations. Students learn to assess incentives and trade offs rather than following scripts that no longer match current conditions. The emphasis on adaptability equips them to navigate varied life structures without assuming one path fits all. Career guidance highlights fields that offer self sufficiency and flexibility, recognizing that many will spend significant portions of life as singles or in non traditional arrangements. Workplace cultures evolve as employees bring different priorities shaped by these realities. Men who value autonomy seek roles with clear boundaries and direct rewards for effort rather than environments heavy on performative social obligations. Employers offering flexibility, fair compensation, and results focused evaluation attract and retain talent motivated by personal stability. Corporate policies that respect personal time and reduce unnecessary drama improve overall productivity and morale. The shift benefits those who deliver value consistently, regardless of household type. Women who have built strong independent foundations often excel in positions requiring self motivation and resilience, showing that capability translates across contexts. Health outcomes improve for many who adopt self directed lifestyles because the reduction in chronic stress from unbalanced dynamics allows better recovery and maintenance. Consistent physical activity becomes sustainable when it serves personal energy levels rather than job external appearance pressures. Nutrition aligns with functional needs, supporting focus and endurance through demanding days. Mental clarity emerges from routines that minimize unnecessary conflict and maximize control over daily inputs. Sleep quality rises when evenings belong fully to restoration rather than negotiation or worry. These gains compound over years, creating a stronger foundation for whatever challenges arise, whether economic shifts or personal transitions. Community responses that succeed focus on practical inclusion rather than judgment or pressure toward specific lifestyles. Local groups organize around shared interests from skill workshops to recreational activities that welcome participants at different life stages. Volunteer efforts fill gaps in traditional support by providing mutual assistance without romantic or familial expectations. The emphasis on contribution and reliability builds social capital that benefits everyone involved. Isolation decreases when people connect through genuine common ground rather than obligation. These organic networks demonstrate that humans can meet social needs in varied ways when formal structures loosen. Technological advancements amplify the feasibility of independent paths by enabling greater self sufficiency. Tools for budgeting, skill acquisition, health monitoring, and remote collaboration reduce barriers that once made solo living more precarious. Online resources provide information tailored to personal circumstances, allowing faster learning from collective experiences. Flexible work arrangements expand options for balancing income generation with personal priorities. These developments make self directed lives not only possible, but increasingly optimized for those who choose them. Legal and policy discussions gain urgency as the data on outcomes accumulates. Frameworks around family matters that provide predictability and perceived fairness lower the perceived risks that drive disengagement. Measures addressing housing affordability and cost of living directly impact the practicality of forming stable partnerships. Educational investments in practical life skills prepare individuals for real world responsibilities. The goal is creating conditions where voluntary cooperation can flourish based on mutual benefit rather than one sided expectations. When systems demonstrate consistent equity, they encourage participation rather than withdrawal. The cultural conversation evolves when it incorporates the full range of lived experiences without forcing conformity to outdated ideals. Stories that explore self discovery, resilience, and redefine success resonate because they mirror what people observe around them. Public discourse benefits from honest examination of incentives and trade offs rather than blame or denial. Narratives that value character contribution and practical wisdom help normalize different viable paths. The broadening of acceptable models reflects the reality that human fulfillment takes multiple forms when circumstances change. Philosophical grounding reminds us that freedom carries responsibility and that individuals have the right to pursue well being through means that respect others. Societies function best when members exercise both in ways that sustain collective stability. The current adjustments test that balance, but also offer chances to refine social contracts around agency and reciprocity. Men who chose to step back exercise freedom while accepting responsibility for their own outcomes. Women building independent lives do the same, demonstrating capability across contexts. The dialogue that emerges from these choices can lead to stronger arrangements if grounded in observable results. Economic theory explains the behavior through rational choice, where expected costs and benefits guide decisions. When the utility of traditional partnership declines due to high financial, emotional, or legal risks, participants adjust by opting for alternatives that deliver higher net satisfaction. Cultural and material conditions in modern economies altered those calculations for many men, leading to widespread disengagement. Understanding this mechanism allows for targeted approaches that improve the equation without compulsion. Policies that reduce unnecessary burdens or increase genuine benefits stand a better chance of encouraging voluntary engagement. Demographic analysis projects continued evolution as lower partnership and birth rates reshape population structures over decades. Planning for infrastructure, education, and retirement systems must account for larger shares of single or small households. The focus shifts toward supporting well being across diverse arrangements while maintaining economic vitality through productivity and adaptability. Immigration automation and policy innovation become part of the toolkit for addressing labor and dependency challenges. The trends are not reversible by wishful thinking, but they can be managed through realistic assessment and flexible responses. Anthropological perspectives show that gender roles and family forms have varied across history and cultures, adapting to material conditions and values of each era. Industrialized societies with extended lifespans, technological abundance, and shifting economic pressures face unique combinations that disrupt older models. The current phase represents one such adaptation, where experimentation leads to new equilibria. What worked under different constraints may lose relevance when incentives realign and people respond accordingly. Flexibility in social organization allows resilience rather than rigidity that breaks under pressure. The men who walked away It did not coordinate some grand movement, but arrived at similar conclusions through parallel experiences of unbalanced dynamics and high costs. Their sustained focus on personal peace created a visible signal that prompted reflection across society. Women facing practical challenges have the opportunity to respond with adaptations that build on their strengths and address real concerns from all sides. Societies that learn from the outcomes can foster conditions where relationships form voluntarily because they make sense for the participants involved. The process is sobering because it reveals the limits of previous assumptions, but it also clears space for more honest and workable foundations. Daily life for those committed to self directed paths often settles into rhythms that prioritize restoration and growth. Mornings allow intentional starts without external coordination. Physical routines build capability and mood stability as non negotiable elements. Meals serve functional nourishment tailored to individual needs. Work benefits from undivided attention, yielding higher output and satisfaction. Evenings provide wind down that prepares for the next cycle. Weekends open for deeper pursuit of interests that were previously compromised. This control over time fosters agency that many describe as profoundly grounding after periods of constant adjustment to others' expectations. Financial stewardship reinforces the lifestyle through conservative habits that favor assets and capability over liabilities or displays. Savings and investments grow when resources remain under direct management. Debt avoidance preserves freedom by reducing external claims on future earnings. Tracking expenditures ensures alignment with core values rather than fleeting pressures. The psychological benefit of this control adds to overall equilibrium, making the path sustainable long term. Social bonds in this context gain depth when based on voluntary shared activities without hidden agendas. Conversations center on ideas and experiences that enrich without emotional labor. Support flows naturally through reliability and mutual interest. The absence of romantic stakes allows honesty and ease that strengthen connections over time. Loneliness is mitigated by purposeful engagement that meets needs without introducing volatility. Health markers respond positively to the reduced stress and increased agency with better regulation of bodily systems and mental states. Preventive practices become routine because ownership of outcomes is clear. Energy levels stabilize, supporting consistent performance in chosen areas. The body adapts to stewardship that treats it as a personal asset rather than a tool for external validation. Women who navigate similar independence often sharpen expertise in areas once divided within partnerships. Decision making gains confidence through repeated practice under full responsibility. Networks are built intentionally to provide backup and perspective. The process cultivates resilience that enhances life quality across potential futures. Practical compatibility rises in importance as experience highlights what sustains rather than what impresses temporarily. The market continues responding to these aggregated choices with innovation in products and services for autonomous adults. Compact solutions, efficient tools, and personalized options expand to meet demand. Businesses that anticipate the shift thrive, while those clinging to old models face contraction. The data provides clear signals for adaptation that smart operators follow. Policymakers who ground decisions in empirical trends rather than ideals craft measures with higher likelihood of positive impact. Support structures that encourage responsibility while assisting transitions avoid creating disincentives. Legal clarity reduces uncertainty that amplifies risk aversion. Economic steps addressing affordability tackle root barriers to formation without mandating outcomes. Cultural output that captures the nuance of adaptation resonates by portraying complex navigation of choice and consequence. Themes of mastery, honest connection, and societal evolution reflect widespread realities. Audiences connect with honest explorations that validate observations while suggesting constructive paths. The pioneers of this withdrawal, through their individual decisions, highlighted flaws in prior setups that demanded attention. Their example of sustained peace challenges assumptions and encourages evaluation based on results. Women who adapt with determination show parallel strength in forging capable lives. The collective learning accelerates as experiences accumulate and share through various channels. This transition underscores the power of aligned action with reality over resistance to it. Illusions fade when confronted with persistent outcomes. Practical adjustments based on truth lead to more durable personal and social structures. Men found value in inward focus. Women build on full ownership. Societies reorient around the behaviors that emerge. The truth remains direct even when it disrupts comfort. People protect their well being when conditions warrant it. Sustainable cooperation returns when mutual benefit is restored. The current landscape reflects that process in motion, and the responses it elicits will shape what comes next. The depth of these changes becomes apparent when examining how they influence identity formation across age groups. Younger men who see stable examples of self reliant living may internalize values of discipline and autonomy as central to masculine development. They prioritize building internal resources before considering external commitments. This shapes career, educational, and social choices toward paths that enhance personal security and capability. Older men who have lived through the shift often reflect on the relief of shedding performance pressures that once defined their interactions. Their sense of self strengthens through demonstrated resilience and the freedom to pursue uncompromised interests. The continuity across generations creates a cultural transmission of practical wisdom that values results over rhetoric. For women, the evolution of identity involves integrating provider and self nurturer roles in ways that acknowledge both strengths and realistic limits. Career achievements contribute to a sense of competence that extends beyond relational value. Personal growth through managing full responsibilities builds confidence in judgment and adaptability. The narrative shifts from external validation to internal metrics of success that sustain through different life phases. This does not eliminate desire for connection, but places it within a framework of mutual equity rather than dependency or dominance. Institutional credibility hinges on demonstrating responsiveness to these ground level shifts. When systems appear to favor outcomes that consistently disadvantage one group, trust erodes and participation declines. Reforms that introduce greater balance in legal, financial, and social domains can restore faith by aligning rules with observable fairness. Transparency in processes and accountability for results matter more than declarations of intent. Individuals then feel safer investing in cooperative arrangements, knowing the guardrails protect rather than expose them. Local communities that adapt effectively create inclusive environments where different household types coexist without hierarchy. Shared resources like tool libraries, community gardens, or skill exchange programs reduce individual burdens while fostering interaction. Events structured around common purposes rather than couple centric themes allow broader participation. The social fabric gains flexibility that accommodates change without tearing. Mutual aid networks emerge organically, providing buffers that formal systems sometimes miss. Technology continues lowering thresholds for effective independence through accessible information and tools. Platforms for learning finance management or health optimization democratize knowledge once limited to specific circles. Collaborative software enables remote contribution that fits varied schedules. Connectivity options reduce geographic barriers to social or professional engagement. These capabilities make self directed paths more robust for larger numbers of people. The ethical dimension centers on respecting agency while recognizing interdependence in complex societies. Freedom to choose living arrangements carries the duty to bear associated costs without shifting them unfairly onto others. Policies and norms that encourage this balance promote both individual flourishing and collective stability. Blanket judgments on paths taken miss the nuance of personal circumstances and rational responses. Constructive dialogue focuses on creating conditions where diverse choices can coexist productively. Economic models that incorporate behavioral adjustments provide better forecasts for consumption savings and growth. Redirected spending towards self investment alters sector dynamics in measurable ways. Labor market participation may shift as motivations evolve with more emphasis on personal returns. Demographic projections gain accuracy when they factor in the reasons behind delayed or foregone formations. The insights guide resource allocation that matches actual rather than assumed behaviors. Anthropological and historical comparisons illustrate that social reorganization is a recurring feature of human societies facing new pressures. What appears disruptive in the moment often settles into stable patterns that fit the era. The current emphasis on autonomy reflects material abundance combined with legal and cultural changes that altered traditional incentives. Adaptation involves retaining valuable elements of cooperation while discarding what no longer functions. Wisdom lies in observing which arrangements deliver sustained well being across contexts. The men whose actions contributed to this visibility did so through accumulated personal assessments rather than ideology. Their persistence in chosen paths provides data points for others evaluating similar decisions. Women responding with pragmatic adjustments add their own data to the collective pool. Societies that synthesize these inputs can refine approaches that respect evidence over preference. The sobering element is the recognition that correction takes time and involves trade offs. The constructive element is the potential for stronger equilibria when lessons are applied honestly. Routines that support long term self direction often include deliberate practices for maintaining momentum. Regular review of goals and progress keeps efforts aligned with values. Physical and mental maintenance routines prevent accumulation of deficits that erode capability. Financial audits ensure resources serve intended purposes. Social check ins with reliable contacts provide perspective without dependency. These habits create a self reinforcing system where peace and progress become the default state. The financial architecture of such lives emphasizes compounding advantages through consistent small choices. Avoiding lifestyle inflation preserves capital for higher return uses. Diversification of income or skills buffers against single points of failure. Investment in personal capital, like education or equipment, yields ongoing dividends in efficiency and opportunity. The mindset treats resources as tools for freedom rather than markers of status. This approach builds resilience that weathers economic cycles more effectively. Interpersonal dynamics in non romantic contexts benefit from clear expectations and voluntary participation. Activities chosen for intrinsic enjoyment foster genuine enthusiasm. Feedback loops remain positive because stakes stay low. Reliability becomes the currency that sustains bonds over time. The absence of performance pressure allows authenticity that deepens connections. Support, when offered, comes from abundance rather than obligation, reducing resentment risks. Physiological adaptations to lower stress environments include improved regulation of hormones, sleep cycles, and inflammatory responses. Consistent movement patterns enhance strength, endurance, and cognitive function. Nutritional strategies optimized for individual metabolism support sustained energy without crashes. Recovery practices like adequate rest and stress management techniques become integrated because their value is experienced directly. The overall system functions with greater efficiency when not burdened by chronic relational strain. Women who master independent management often develop parallel strengths in resource allocation, decision frameworks, and network cultivation. Their experiences highlight the transferable nature of competence across domains. The confidence gained translates into bolder pursuit of goals, whether professional, creative, or personal. Practical wisdom accumulates through trial and error, leading to refined approaches that fit current realities. The process demonstrates human plasticity in responding to shifted conditions. Market innovations continue emerging to serve the growing segment of self managing adults. Solutions for efficient space utilization, time optimization, and personalized wellness address specific pain points of solo living. Businesses that listen to behavioral data rather than legacy assumptions position themselves for sustained relevance. The feedback mechanism of consumer choice accelerates development of fitting products and services. Governance approaches that emphasize evidence based flexibility stand to manage transitions more smoothly. Pilot programs testing different support models can identify what actually encourages positive outcomes. Metrics focused on well being across household types provide better guidance than narrow traditional indicators. The aim is enabling voluntary stable arrangements through reduced barriers and increased fairness. Cultural expressions that honestly depict the spectrum of adaptation contribute to normalization of varied paths. They offer mirrors for audiences processing their own situations and models for constructive responses. The richness comes from including multiple perspectives without enforcing resolution. Public discourse advances when it prioritizes shared understanding over division. The individuals at the forefront of these behavioral shifts, through their quiet decisions, illuminated mismatches that required attention. Their sustained choices continue influencing broader norms by example. Parallel adaptations on other sides add layers to the evolving picture. The synthesis of experiences points towards frameworks that honor agency while fostering beneficial cooperation. The journey involves discomfort as old patterns release, but it also opens space for alignments that better serve current conditions. This extended look at the interconnected effects shows how personal level choices scale into societal restructuring. The collapse of previous economic and social assumptions around provision and partnership created conditions where new priorities took hold. Men discovered tangible benefits in redirecting focus inward. Women encountered the full scope of independent responsibilities. Institutions and markets adjusted in response. The process continues as data accumulates and lessons integrate. Truth grounded in observable patterns provides the steadiest guide through the transition. Practical actions based on that truth build the most durable outcomes. The men who walked away exemplified that approach, and their path remains a clear illustration of agency meeting reality. The broader response will determine how smoothly societies navigate the resulting changes toward whatever new balance emerges. Reaching this point in the discussion after investing the full hour demonstrates real engagement with the core issues at hand. The points raised cut through the noise to the actual mechanics driving these shifts. If these angry guy videos have been delivering value in laying out the straightforward realities, you can support the effort by grabbing me a Red Bull through the link in the description. Drop a comment below with your take on the discussion, whether you see the same patterns playing out or have additional angles to share. Like the video if it resonated. Do not forget to subscribe. And if you found it worthwhile, share it with others who might benefit. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.